In my last video, I described Dabi vs Shoto Part 2, and how Shoto awakened his quirk into a new understanding and power that he calls Phosphor, which can completely stop combustion and any heat at its source. In that same video, we also discussed how Dabi, in an effort to surpass Shoto, awakens his own quirk into a very similar power to Shoto's in order to counter him. But what exactly did Dabi do, and what else might he be capable of with this new quirk awakening? Let's explain how Dabi's own version of Phosphor could potentially work, but if you clicked on this video looking for Dabi vs Shoto Part 2 from the manga or for Dabi's backstory, you can check out my two recent videos exactly on that topic, the day Dabi dies and the day Touya Todoroki became Dabi. But staying on topic, Dabi tells us that he copied Shoto's technique as a last-ditch effort to survive and win the fight. Well, what is Shoto's technique technically doing, and how would Dabi achieve the same effect with just his fire? Since we know after all that Shoto has fire and ice to combine into this new technique. Phosphor is described as follows. Phosphor allows Shoto to channel both halves of his quirk throughout his body via his circulatory system, using his heart as a generator to circulate the chilled and hot blood around his entire body, merging the two halves of his quirk into a single ability. The move grants Shoto an incredible defensive and offensive advantage against most opponents, especially those wielding pyrokinetic quirks. The flames created by the technique are described as being cold fire of sorts, allowing him to burn and freeze his opponents at the same time. This move gets its name when it's used against Dabi during the final war. Shoto uses it to protect himself from Dabi's jet burn, as well as using it to power his ultimate moves, Cold Flame's Pale Blade and Great Glacial Aegir. The move takes a certain amount of concentration and focus to build up, so if Shoto loses control of the move, he has to build it back up again. And after being seemingly defeated by Shoto using this technique, Dabi is able to replicate it by using his own quirk to reinvigorate his body and cancel out Shoto's ice. Now, phosphorus, which Phosphor is named after, is a chemical element that exists in two major categories: white phosphorus and red phosphorus. White phosphorus emits a faint glow when exposed to oxygen at cold or room temperature. Red phosphorus is created due to a chemical reaction that occurs when white phosphorus is heated to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Therefore, Shoto's quirk awakening being able to combine both the fire, signified by Shoto's red hair side, and ice, Shoto's white side, is similar to the chemical element. Now, interestingly enough, in that description, we learn about red and white phosphorus, which the bit of trivia attributes to the two sides of Shoto's body and bloodline being red and white. But with Dabi, what would his Phosphor be like? Given we know that Dabi has a body that matches an ice user, instead of him having a combination of red and white like Shoto does that can exist in perfect balance, I believe Dabi's Phosphor, because of his body type, is actually entirely running on the white phosphorus instead of using any red phosphorus. Here's a description of white phosphorus in more detail. White phosphorus is a soft, waxy, flammable substance consisting of tetrahedral P molecules. It is often slightly yellowish because of the presence of impurities. There goes Dabi not being perfect enough again. White phosphorus is highly reactive and spontaneously ignites at about 30 Celsius in moist air. It is usually stored underwater to prevent exposure to the air, as it is extremely toxic even in very small quantities. So much like how Dabi's quirk in many ways is toxic to his body, white phosphorus is toxic to humans. It's symbolism like this that I really enjoy in My Hero Academia, and just like how a fire will use white phosphorus as fuel to get even more violent, it's like Dabi's body is literally fuel that burns away and makes his flames rage all the more. Now, if Dabi's version of Phosphor does work on these principles, then what could it do? After all, it's not just a hype-looking transformation. We know there should be a difference in his powers from this. So what could they be? Well, here's what I believe is going on. You see, Dabi's fire is the kind with heat that he only knows how to turn up. Now, with him breaking through a power that completely stops heat and combustion as a rule, could it be that Dabi's own version of Phosphor actually aggravates flames and makes them even more powerful? This would make the reactions happening in Dabi's fire far more violent, driving the heat way up. But when used on an enemy fire user, What would happen? If Dabi uses his new technique on Endeavor, could the fire from Dabi's Phosphor mix with Endeavor's own flames to make them so hot that they even burn Endeavor? Something like this would be a very effective counter against other fire users, and it might even be the reason that Dabi was able to break free from Shoto's technique, because the white Phosphor that Dabi was using was able to overpower the red Phosphor that Shoto was using to make the white Phosphor that Shoto had mixed into his technique actually react and start getting hotter, lending to Dabi's own flames getting stronger at the same time. I think this interpretation would make it very, very difficult for anyone not ready to put their life and body completely on the line to fight Dabi, because if they aren't ready for that, they'd have to stop using their own flames completely, letting Dabi melt them away anyway, and if they didn't care about their body, they'd end up much like Dabi, with their own flames largely contributing to their end. Now, we've seen that Dabi's heat is hot enough to melt the All Might statue in Kamino Ward. Assuming the statue is made out of solid brass, which melts at a temperature of 930 degrees Celsius, Dabi's flames have gotten ridiculously hot, and that was even before the Phosphor. To melt a human body down, you'd probably need heats of around 200 Fahrenheit, but that would only be 93 degrees. And we know that fire users in My Hero Academia definitely have a certain level of fire resistance. Even Endeavor has a certain level of fire resistance because he has to be able to resist the level of fire that he can put out. But we've seen that with characters like Endeavor, or especially Endeavor, that his fire can eventually get to a limit where he has to cool down, or it's gonna start putting him to sleep and taking him completely out of the fight. And we also know that Touya's fire is actually stronger than Endeavor's fire, so could Touya's fire reach a point where it's just far too much for Endeavor to deal with? What I'm really asking is there a point that Dabi can reach where his flames combined with his own version of Phosphor can even melt the flesh and bones of a fire user like Endeavor? And that's not the end of the line, because there are two other theories for what might happen with Dabi's Quirk awakening, and they're pretty common to the fandom by now, so I'd like to touch on those also. Of course, we have the well-known Dabi Phoenix Theory that suggests that Dabi will burn himself up and that his quirk will ultimately bring him back, maybe even with no scars, as a result of its true nature. It's true that we don't actually have a quirk narration card for Dabi when we have one for practically every other quirk user in the series, alive or dead. This tells us that Dabi's quirk, which doesn't even officially have a name aside from the fan quirk name of cremation, is potentially holding on some other aspects to it that hasn't yet been described or shown in the series. But I believe when that activates, we will finally get a narrated description of the quirk in its full detail, and Dabi dying and then bursting into flames only to be reborn like a Phoenix Down got used on him would definitely be a good point to do this. Now, I think that that would be the good ending, because that means that Dabi in that instance would potentially be able to be saved as long as his fire doesn't scar him up again and he's willing to give up. But the other potential ending is far darker. My personal theory that I added to the mix with all the others was that Dabi's true quirk would allow him to actually become fire. This means that as Dabi's body burns away, he gets more and more powerful as his quirk reaches the point of singularity and he transcends his body, becoming a walking, living quirk in this instance. Dabi would become his flames and would be truly unleashed in a way that would make it exceedingly difficult to take him out, because he would be a raging fire-like creature that could only be truly snuffed out at this point, with no hope of him being saved. In this state, I think Touya would be the most dangerous character in My Hero Academia, since everyone else has a body that you can take down with enough effort. But regardless of how Dabi's quirk continues to grow, the fact that he was able to awaken it against Shoto in such a dire moment after seeing Shoto's quirk awakening only once tells us that things aren't over for this master in the way of fire, and if he isn't taken out immediately, Dabi might actually be what he told Shoto he was during their second fight, the very limit of this quirk-based society, the singularity itself. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who supported this video and has been supporting my videos lately. I feel like we definitely have seen an uptick in new viewers and old returning viewers coming back to the channel. For anyone that's new or anyone that hasn't done it yet, I want to ask you guys to please hit that subscribe button and take the extra few seconds to just click the drop down menu and turn on all notifications, because that really helps me out so you can actually see when my videos are released. My analytics tell me that if everyone did that, we would easily be at 400,000 subscribers, but I just would be happy with 300,000. It's been a little while since I hit another 100,000 mark, so I would really appreciate that from you guys. If you enjoy these stories or if you enjoy this video, please also give the video a like, and if you get this video to 1,500 likes, I'll go into the comment section below and I'll let you guys tell me which story from My Hero Academia you guys want to hear next. So get those comments and likes up and you can decide what the next video is gonna be. Love you guys so much. It's Pineapple. I'll see you later. Peace.